My son disposed of his home and handed his wife $700,000 to use on anything she desired. Then they showed up at my place expecting to move in like it was their right. I refused. And my daughter-in-law struck me right there in view of the entire neighborhood. That very day, I contacted my attorney. When the legal papers arrived, my daughter-in-law freaked out, understanding that consequences were heading their way. Before we go on, please hit subscribe on the channel and drop a comment with the current time and your location. The telephone buzzed just as I raised the fork to my lips. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes following Mary's old recipe, though my version never quite hit the mark. I placed the fork aside and grabbed the ancient corded phone. Dad, I've got fantastic news. We unloaded the house for $700,000. Jeremy's tone buzzed with forced excitement. I almost gagged on the mouthful I'd just swallowed. Jeremy, hold on, what? You sold the place? Can you imagine? $700,000. The real estate scene is booming. We scored far more than we anticipated. The fork dropped from my grasp, rattling onto the dish. A chill gripped my gut that wasn't from the meal. Son, I'm confused. When did this happen? You never brought it up. It all went down quickly, Dad, super quick. These cash buyers appeared out of nowhere. No need for inspections. We had to jump on it. I rose, carrying the phone into the living room. My knees wobbled. Jeremy, where are you going to stay now? A brief silence. In the distance, I caught sounds of vehicles passing, perhaps a door shutting. We'll sort it out, Dad. No need to fret over us. The key point is we pocketed this huge windfall. But Jeremy, that was your residence. You and Lori only purchased it 3 years back. Exactly. And now we've turned a massive profit. Lori's thrilled. She's already planning all the luxuries we can finally get. The chill in my belly crept higher. I dropped into my armchair, the one opposite Mary's photo on the mantel. Luxuries? What sort? Oh, Lori's eyeing some high-end decor. Maybe that Mercedes she's dreamed of. And she spotted this fantastic resort getaway. Jeremy. My words came out harsher than planned. What about the $300,000 I provided for that property? Quiet. Long enough to make me think the line had gone dead. Dad, I'm still here. Son, listen. Dad, you handed us that cash. Now it's ours to handle as we please. The statement struck me like a punch. I gazed at Mary's cheerful expression in the silver frame, recalling how she'd always insisted Jeremy had a kind soul, just required some direction. Ours. Jeremy, that was a loan. We talked about it, did we? I don't recall putting pen to any loan agreement. My grip on the handset shook. You didn't have to sign anything. You're my boy. You vowed to repay me when possible. Jeremy's chuckle didn't resemble the child I'd nurtured at all. Dad, that was casual chatter. You know how these family matters work. Plus, you're not hurting for funds. You've got this spacious home, your retirement income, Mom's insurance payout. Jeremy, I relied on you, and you ought to be pleased for us. Your own son is finally advancing. Isn't that what Dads hope for? I got up once more, heading to my study. The cord extended to its limit. My desk drawer jammed as usual, but I tugged it free and retrieved the manila file stored inside. Jeremy, I've got the banking proof right in front of me. $300,000 pulled from my savings in June 2021. You claimed it was for your ideal home and that you'd reimburse me. Dad, drop it. We're kin. Kin support one another. Support one another. What about supporting me? What about keeping your promise? Hey, I have to go. Lori's in the vehicle and we've got plans. Appreciate your flexibility on this. Jeremy, hold on. The tone droned in my ear. I remained there, clutching the silent phone, eyeing the scattered bank papers on my desk. 3 years prior, those documents had symbolized optimism, affection, faith. Now they seemed like proof of my gravest error. I replaced the handset and gathered the loan records. My signature appeared so assured, so believing. Jeremy's script was present too. Not on formal docs, but on the gratitude note he'd sent afterward. Dad, you're amazing. We'll absolutely return it. Love, Jeremy and Lori. The text swam as I examined the card beneath my desk light. Outside, the autumn breeze shook the windows of my vacant home. The gratitude note quivered in my grasp. Jeremy's penmanship hadn't evolved much from his youth. Still that rushed scrawl I'd spotted on schoolwork and holiday greetings. But now those curves and strokes seemed like deceptions etched in pen. I laid the note aside and flipped open the bank record from June 2021. There it stood. Extraction of $300,000 from my nest egg. The biggest transfer I'd ever executed. And I'd done it without second thoughts. The recollection surged back vividly. That Sunday afternoon in early summer, windows ajar, birds chirping out back. Jeremy and Lori at my kitchen table, her palm on his arm while he outlined their predicament. Dad, we've discovered our perfect home, but we're $300,000 shy on the deposit. I'd been brewing coffee, the same Maxwell House I still sipped daily. Its aroma wafted through the room as I absorbed my son's optimistic words. The owners want a swift close, Lori had chimed in, her grin warm and appreciative. We've never sought something this big from you, but we had no other options. I recalled setting down the coffee pot, studying their youthful faces, brimming with aspirations and potential. Jeremy had looked anxious, twisting his wedding band. Lori kept adjusting her hair, her tell when aiming to impress. Naturally, son. I'll assist. This is for your future. The ease on Jeremy's face had been instant and sincere. Or so I'd believed. He'd risen and embraced me, a rarity these days. Dad, you're incredible. We'll definitely reimburse you. I know it's a hefty sum. No hurry, Jeremy. The main thing is your happiness. You and Lori merit a lovely place. Even Lori had misty eyes that day, expressing thanks repeatedly. She dubbed me the kindest father-in-law ever. I poured myself a whiskey, a rarity on weekday evenings. The golden fluid scorched, but it seemed fitting. Everything scorched now. That day in 2021, I'd felt like the most fortunate guy around. My son required aid, and I could deliver it. Mary would have approved. I'd thought she'd always prioritized family care. But that Jeremy, thankful, honorable, offering assurances, where had he vanished? When had he transformed into this outsider who mocked my faith and labeled my kindness naive? I strolled to the window, peering at the shadowed road. The Jenkins porch lamp glowed, and I saw Harold Jenkins inspecting his mailbox, despite the late hour past 9 there. Ordinary folks leading ordinary existences, likely never dreaming their kids could deceive them so utterly. The bank papers weighed more when I lifted them again. No longer mere sheets, but testimony to my own naivety. I'd inked my name so boldly, trusting in vows that held no weight. Back at my desk, I arranged the documents in timeline order. The withdrawal form from June 15, 2021. The gratitude note dated June 20th, the snapshots. Jeremy had messaged of their new place in July. All markers of an era when I trusted my son to be honorable. Mary's photo observed me from the far side of the room. I'd captured her look in that shot during our final holiday season together. Tolerant, insightful, mildly entertained by my words. What would she make of this mess? What advice would she offer? I knew it. Mary never allowed anyone to trample her, not even relatives. Particularly not relatives. The whiskey was almost drained when I finally shut the folder and tucked it back in the drawer. The papers would remain there come morning, still evidence of Jeremy's commitments and my misguided belief. But this evening, for the first time post-phone call, I sensed something beyond dismay and pain. Something tougher, icier, something akin to Mary's resilience coursing through me. I switched off the lamp and ascended the stairs, the aged timber groaning beneath my steps. The next day would deliver what it would. But this night I craved rest. Genuine rest. Not the fitful turning I'd endured since Mary's passing. The home quieted around me as I headed to the bedroom, each known noise a cue that this was my domain, my refuge, my stronghold, and no one, not even my flesh and blood, would strip that from me. The hammering on my front door broke the dawn stillness like a shot. I bolted upright, peering at the alarm clock. 7:15 a.m. The rapping echoed again, forceful and insistent. I fumbled to the window, drawing the drape. A relocation van occupied my driveway. Jeremy's vehicle sat behind it, trunk ajar, luggage in sight. The pounding started anew, fiercer now. I donned my bathrobe and slippers, rushing down. Through the etched glass of my entry, I discerned two shapes, one lofty, one smaller. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the bolt. Jeremy loomed on my stoop, beaming as if it were a holiday dawn. Behind him, Lori clutched a luxury bag, her cosmetics flawless despite the early time. Hey, Dad, we've arrived. I stared blankly, still absorbing. What is this about, Jeremy? Well, with the house gone, we require lodging. He motioned to the van as if it clarified all. We'll crash with you briefly, just till we locate something appropriate. The crisp October breeze nipped through my light robe. No, definitely not. You don't fit here. Jeremy's grin wavered momentarily. Dad, don't be greedy. You own this large place, and we're your kin. He advanced as if to brush by me, but I blocked the entrance, clutching the jamb. This is my residence. You've chosen your path. Our path. Lori's tone cut like shards. We're kin. Kin aid one another during hardships. I eyed her impeccably coiffed locks, her pricey coat, the gem studs gleaming in the sunrise. Hardships? You just cashed in a home for $700,000. That cash is already earmarked, Jeremy replied, his voice chilling. Lori has priorities, Dad, vital priorities. More vital than shelter. From the opposite side of the street, I spotted Harold Jenkins in his yard, feigning interest in his daily news, but obviously eavesdropping. Mrs. Chen's drapes fluttered at her pane. Dad, you're acting irrationally. Jeremy's words rang through the serene area. We're not seeking handouts. We're requesting short-term kin assistance after you took $300,000 from me. We took nothing. Lori advanced, her cheeks reddening. You provided that cash willingly. It was a loan. Where's the documentation? Jeremy demanded. Produce the signed loan forms. The dawn grew chillier and I cinched my robe. More locals appeared now. The Johnsons had halted their stroll, lingering by their postbox and observing. You know there are no forms, I murmured. I trusted my boy. Well, perhaps you shouldn't trust so easily, Lori barked. Perhaps you should have pondered more before commitments you'd rue. Lori stopped, Jeremy interjected, but he didn't seem apologetic. He seemed weary. No, it's not stopping, she whirled back to me, her pitch escalating. You're a self-centered elderly guy holed up in this vast home solo. We're youthful. We have our futures before us, and you wish us to endure due to your second thoughts. Harold had edged nearer, abandoning his news pretense. Other residents emerged, folks with pets retrieving mail, all pulled by the uproar. I want you off my land, I stated, my tone firmer than my emotions. Dad, you'll rue this choice, Jeremy declared. The facade had vanished entirely. No more phony grins, no more sly persuasion. Kin are meant to unite. When you're frail and ill and require aid, recall this instant. Is that a warning, son? It's fact, Dad, you're aging. Lori inched nearer, near enough for her lavish scent to hit me. You'll rethink. You'll plead for our return. And perhaps we'll think about it. Leave my land. That's when she hit me. The smack echoed through the dawn like a lash. My head jerked, my face burning, and I staggered against the frame. The shame scorched worse than the hurt. Harold let go of his paper and advanced. Hey, that's too far. Jeremy seized Lori's arm, yanking her to the car. Let's go, we're finished. You'll rue your avarice, Lori yelled back as Jeremy hauled her off. You'll rue being such a miserly, resentful old fool. They hurled their bags into the trunk, Jeremy slamming it with force that rattled the vehicle. The van operator, who'd stayed in his seat throughout the clash, fired up the motor. As they sped off, wheels screeching on the pavement, Harold neared, worry etched on his lined features. I felt my throbbing face, conscious that much of the block had just seen my son's spouse attack me on my own stoop. The dawn breeze felt sharper now, but I stayed in my entry. Watching their vehicle vanish at the bend, Harold came up cautiously, his lined face furrowed with worry. Behind him, others hovered. Mrs. Chen had emerged onto her stoop, and the Johnsons remained rooted by their postbox. Willard, pal, you handled it correctly, Harold stated, his voice firm yet compassionate. Don't let them sow doubt in you. I felt the spot where Lori's palm had connected. The burn was easing, but the disgrace cut deeper. 35 years of nurturing Jeremy, of providing all I could, and this was the outcome. His wife hitting me before my community. Did you catch what occurred? I queried Harold, though I knew he had. All of it. So did Tom Patterson yonder and the Johnsons. If you need folks to vouch for that woman's actions, you've got them. Tom Patterson lifted his hand in a brief salute from his drive, his look stern but backing. Mrs. Chen dipped her head from her stoop, her typical dawn grin swapped for something sterner. That lad of yours crossed bounds, Harold went on, glancing to where Jeremy's car had fled. And his spouse? That was Battery, straightforward. Battery! The term lingered in the crisp dawn like a judgment. I'd viewed it as a smack, a flare of anger. But Harold nailed it. Legally, Lori had assaulted me. I taught him better, I muttered more inwardly than to Harold. Sometimes offspring stray despite solid upbringing. Occurs in fine homes. The issue now is your next move. What was my next move? A day ago, I'd been a serene widower savoring his calm golden years. Now I was a guy menaced and hit by his own blood. Harold, I need to ponder. Regain my footing. Sure thing. But Willard, if you opt for charges or court steps, you'll have backing. This community supports you. The Johnsons approached, their exercise gear moist with fall mist. Willard, we're terribly sorry, Mrs. Johnson said. We overheard everything. That lady had no justification. None whatsoever. her spouse concurred. You were protecting your domain. I glanced at my home, the one Mary and I acquired 4 decades back, where we'd reared Jeremy, where we'd envisioned aging side by side, where I'd aimed to spend my final days tranquilly. I should head in, I said at last. Harold agreed but lingered a bit. Willard, I'm just across if you need a thing, anything at all. Brew, chat, or aid with what's ahead. The others echoed similar sentiments before scattering. Tom Patterson hung back, strolling over to Harold and me. Willard, I've witnessed kin spats, but not like that. Your son's wife overstepped a boundary that can't be ignored. Thanks, Tom. Harold's spot on about witnesses.
What went down this morning wasn't mere kin quarrel.
That lady assaulted you on your turf. Once they'd departed, I stood solo in my yard, feeling my face once more. The bodily ache was slight, but something had shifted. The guy who'd taken Jeremy's call Friday evening was no more, supplanted by someone tougher, more resolute. I returned to my entry, stopping to eye the skid marks Jeremy's car etched on my drive, proof of their rushed exit, their awareness of guilt for their deeds. Inside, the home seemed altered, not breached but more fortified. My haven had been challenged, but it endured, and I was still present, still upright, still the master of this spot they'd attempted to seize. The crimson mark on my face would vanish, but the insight it granted would persist. The lavatory mirror reflected a changed man, not the beaten elder Jeremy likely anticipated, but one with resolve in his gaze and a red imprint on his left side, like a mark of battle. I brushed the sore area lightly. Laurie's ring had nicked a tiny cut by my ear. Proof, I grasped, confirmation of her act, but I required more than assault proof. I needed a plan. Heading to my study, I felt transformed, more stable, more directed than since Mary's departure 2 years prior. The morning's disgrace had scorched away my gentleness, exposing the engineer I'd long been, systematic, pragmatic, unyielding in tackling issues. Jeremy was an issue demanding resolution. I eased into my preferred seat and slid open the drawer holding key papers. My organization was by letter and exact. Routines from 4 decades in engineering. Under J for Jeremy, I located the desired folder. The loan pact was right there in a manila sleeve labeled Jeremy Home Loan 2021. I extracted it gingerly, treating the sheets like the judicial tools they represented. Mary's photo observed from the desk, her grin supportive. She'd always claimed I was overly trusting with kin, too eager to give sans safeguards. Stand up for fairness, Willard, she'd advised during a builder clash. Kindness doesn't equal frailty. Time to cease kindness. The agreement spanned 8 pages, printed on Samuel Grant's formal stationery. I donned my specs and scrutinized each provision, each section, each phrase Jeremy had endorsed 3 years ago. Base sum $300,000. Duration 5 years with installments starting January 2022. Breach section. If payments lapsed over 90 days, the full sum became payable at once. Jeremy hadn't paid a dime, not 1 cent in almost 3 years. Per the pact, he owed $300,000 plus built-up interest at 8% yearly. I grabbed my calculator, the same for decades of tech computations. Base $300,000 interest over 3 years. $72,000 total owed $372,000. My hands stayed firm as I noted the numbers on a pad. Jeremy fancied himself smart, declaring the funds are present. But pacts don't deceive and autographs don't vanish just because they're bothersome. I reclined in my seat, raising the document to the dawn rays filtering through my study pane. Jeremy's autograph was distinct, attested by Samuel and certified by his aide. Valid, obligatory, and actionable. For the first time since Friday's call, I grinned. The kid who'd pitched fits when denied, who'd mastered scheming over earning, who'd let that woman hit me in my own space. That boy had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated his father. I organized the papers carefully, making copies with my home scanner. Another habit from my engineering days. Always have backups, always document everything. Always be prepared. The original documents went back into their folder, which went back into the drawer, which I locked with the small key I kept on my keyring. The copies went into a second folder marked Legal Action Jeremy. Outside, I could hear normal Saturday morning sounds. Lawn mowers, children playing, dogs barking, life continuing as if nothing had changed. But something fundamental had shifted in my world, and I was finally ready to acknowledge it. Jeremy wasn't my little boy anymore. He was a man who'd stolen from his father and allowed his wife to assault me. He was someone who needed to learn that actions should have consequences. I looked at Mary's photograph again, imagining her approval of my methodical approach. She'd married an engineer, after all. She knew I was capable of more than just kindness. The phone sat on my desk. Samuel Grant's number programmed into memory. But not yet. First, I needed to plan exactly what I wanted from this confrontation. Revenge was a dish best served cold, Mary used to say, though she was usually talking about dinner leftovers. The contract felt solid in my hands, a bridge between Jeremy's promises and his accountability, between his assumptions and reality. I settled deeper into my chair and began to read the document again, this time looking for every advantage, every legal tool at my disposal. The morning was young and I had work to do. Jeremy's signature stared up at me from the bottom of page 8, hasty but legible, the same handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards and school reports for 35 years, but something about it triggered a specific memory, sharp and clear as yesterday, summer 2021. Samuel's office downtown, the leather chairs still holding the afternoon heat, legal diplomas arranged precisely on mahogany-paneled walls. Jeremy had been fidgeting with his wedding ring while I explained why we needed documentation. "Dad, why don't you trust me?" he'd asked, his voice carrying that edge of hurt he'd perfected as a teenager. "This isn't about trust," I'd replied, watching Samuel organize the contract pages on his conference table. "This is about responsibility, about doing things properly." The memory felt as real as the morning light streaming through my study window. Samuel had been wearing his navy suit that day, the one he saved for important client meetings. He'd arranged coffee for all three of us, though Jeremy barely touched his. "Mr. Brooks," Samuel had said, addressing Jeremy with professional courtesy, "this contract protects both you and your father. It establishes clear terms for repayment and prevents any future misunderstandings." Jeremy had shifted in his chair, looking everywhere except at the documents. "Dad, we're family. Why do we need lawyers and contracts for family?" "Because family doesn't mean foolish," I'd answered. "Your mother always said, the clearest agreements make the best relationships." That had been the moment. Jeremy's expression changing from hurt to something harder, more calculating. Even then, 3 years ago, I'd seen a glimpse of the man who would eventually laugh at my trust and allow his wife to strike me. "Fine, Dad," he'd said finally, reaching for Samuel's expensive pen if it makes you feel better. But it hadn't made him feel better. I could see that now, remembering how his hand had hesitated before each signature, how he'd asked twice about the default clauses, how his voice had tightened when Samuel explained that the full amount would become due immediately if he missed payments. "Mr. Brooks," Samuel had said to Jeremy, "do you understand that this creates a legal obligation? This isn't a gift that can be forgotten or ignored." "I understand," Jeremy had replied, though his tone suggested he understood nothing except that he needed to sign to get the money. The irony was perfect. Jeremy's reluctance to sign had been my first warning that he wasn't taking the agreement seriously. But his signature, reluctant or not, made the contract legally binding. I closed my eyes, remembering the rest of that afternoon. After the signing, we'd walked to the parking garage together. Jeremy had been quiet, processing what had just happened. "Dad, you know I'm good for this money, right?" "Of course, son. That's why I'm giving it to you. The contract makes it feel businesslike. Sometimes business and family have overlap. That doesn't mean I love you less." He'd hugged me then quickly and awkwardly before getting into his car. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." Those had been the last grateful words I'd heard from my son. Now, sitting in my study 3 years later, with his signature under my reading glasses, I understood what Samuel had been protecting me from. Not Jeremy's inability to repay the loan. His unwillingness to acknowledge it existed. The contract was Samuel's gift to me, though I hadn't fully appreciated it at the time. Every clause, every term, every legal protection had been crafted by a man who understood both law and human nature. I reached for my phone, scrolling through the contacts until I found Samuel's number. Saturday morning, he'd probably be having breakfast with his wife, reading the newspaper, enjoying his weekend peace. But this couldn't wait until Monday. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Willard, everything all right? Samuel, I need to see you today if possible. It's about Jeremy and that loan contract you prepared." A pause, then a change in Histon from personal friend to professional attorney. "What's happened?" "They sold their house for $700,000. Jeremy called to tell me the money was ours now, and that he never intended to repay the loan. Yesterday morning, he and his wife came here demanding to move in. When I refused, she struck me." "She what?" "Struck me in front of witnesses." "Samuel, I need to know my legal options." Another pause, longer this time. When Samuel spoke again, his voice was granite hard. "Willard, I can meet you at my office in 2 hours and bring that contract with you. All of it, the whole thing. Every page, every signature, every witness mark. It's time your son learned what his signature actually means." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and looked at Mary's photograph. She was smiling in that picture, the way she did when she was proud of a decision I'd made. The contract felt heavier in my hands now. Not just paper and ink, but justice waiting to be served. 2 hours had passed since I'd spoken with Samuel. The contract lay spread across my desk like a battle plan, each clause now familiar as my own name. I'd eaten a quiet lunch, organized my thoughts, and prepared for what came next. At exactly 2:30, I dialed Samuel's office number from memory. "Willard, I've been expecting your call." Samuel's voice was crisp, professional. "I've had time to review our conversation and pull your file. Are you ready to proceed?" "More than ready." "Good. Let me be clear about your legal position. When Jeremy sold that house, he triggered the acceleration clause in your loan agreement. The entire principal becomes immediately due plus accrued interest at 8% annually." I pulled my calculator closer, though I'd already run the numbers twice. "How much exactly?" $300,000 in principal plus $72,000 in accumulated interest. "Jeremy owes you $372,000 as of today." The figure hit me like cold water. Jeremy had stolen from me, then sold the security for my loan, then demanded to live in my house, and now he owed me more money than he'd ever seen in his life. "What about the assault?" "Separate civil action. With witness testimony from Harold and your other neighbors, we can seek damages for the physical attack, emotional distress, and public humiliation. An elderly victim being struck by a family member. That's significant." Samuel's voice carried the satisfaction of a craftsman discussing quality work. "Willard, your son made every possible legal mistake. He's violated a contract, sold collateral without permission, and allowed his wife to assault the creditor. It's almost impressive in its stupidity. What's our first move?" "Two-step approach. First, I'll send a formal demand letter via certified mail, giving him 10 days to pay the full amount. When he inevitably refuses or ignores it, we file in circuit court for contract enforcement and civil damages." I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't experienced since Mary died. The deep satisfaction of having a plan that would work. How quickly can this happen? "Demand letter goes out tomorrow. If Jeremy's as foolish as he sounds, we'll have our court filing ready within 2 weeks. The beauty of contract law is its simplicity." He signed it. "He owes at the end. Samuel, I need to ask about costs." "Willard, we've been friends for 25 years. I'm taking this on contingency plus expenses. When we win, and we will win, I take 30% of recovery. If somehow we lose, you owe me nothing." The relief was immediate and profound. Samuel understood this wasn't just about money. It was about justice, dignity, and teaching a lesson that was decades overdue. "There's something else," I said, remembering Jeremy's dismissive laugh during our Friday call. "He thinks I'm too old and weak to fight back. He's counting on me being the same pushover I've always been. Then he's about to learn that even patient men have limits. Willard, your documentation is perfect. Your case is ironclad. And your son is about to discover that legal contracts aren't suggestions." After hanging up, I sat quietly in my study, looking at the contract with new appreciation. What had seemed like simple paperwork 3 years ago was now a loaded weapon, cocked and ready to fire. The afternoon light was shifting, casting longer shadows across my desk. Jeremy was probably at work, unaware that his world was about to change. Lori was likely spending their windfall in whatever caught her fancy, equally oblivious to what was coming. They'd treated me like a fool, a resource to be exploited and discarded. But fools don't keep meticulous records, don't consult lawyers, and don't fight back with precision and planning. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad, writing Jeremy legal action at the top in my careful engineer's handwriting. Below it I listed Samuel's timeline: demand letter Tuesday, court filing in 2 weeks, discovery process, trial preparation. For the first time since Friday night, I was looking forward to Monday morning. Monday evening arrived with autumn's early darkness. I'd spent the day reviewing Samuel's strategy, organizing documents, and preparing for what would either be Jeremy's capitulation or his declaration of war. At 6:45 p.m., I dialed Jeremy's number. He answered on the third ring, sounding tired and distracted. "Yeah, Dad. Jeremy, I'm calling to demand immediate repayment of the $300,000 loan I provided for your house purchase." Silence. Complete, stunned silence. "Dad, have you completely lost your mind?" What loan are you talking about? His voice carried that familiar edge of condescension, the tone he'd used since college whenever he thought I was being unreasonable. The loan documented in our signed contract from June 2021. You violated the terms by selling the house without repayment. The acceleration clause makes the full amount immediately due. What contract, Dad? You gave us that money as a gift. There's no contract. I looked down at the 8-page document spread before me. Jeremy's signature clear on the final page. Jeremy, you signed a legal agreement. Samuel Grant prepared it. His secretary witnessed it, and it was notarized. The contract exists and it's enforceable. That worthless piece of paper doesn't mean anything. You can't seriously think. I think you owe me $372,000 principal plus interest, as specified in the agreement you signed. Jeremy's laugh was harsh, brittle. 300 what? Dad, you've really gone off the deep end. Just try to collect. Go ahead and try. Very well, Jeremy. We'll see you in court. The words came out calm and final. 3 years of disappointment, 2 days of planning, and decades of avoiding confrontation had led to this moment. Court. You're threatening to sue your own son over money you gave as a gift. What kind of father does that? The kind who keeps his word and expects others to keep theirs. The kind who doesn't tolerate being struck by his daughter-in-law in his own front yard. That was barely a slap. You're making it sound like assault because that's exactly what it was. Battery committed in front of witnesses. Jeremy Harold Jenkins saw everything. So did the Johnsons and Mrs. Chen. Jeremy's breathing was audible through the phone, quick and shallow. The cocky dismissal was cracking, replaced by something sharper, more desperate. Dad, this is insane. You're talking about destroying our family over money. You destroyed our family when you decided my generosity made me a fool. I'm simply seeking legal remedy for breach of contract. I'll fight you. I'll get my own lawyer, and we'll prove that contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. I hope you dug it a lawyer, Jeremy. Any competent attorney will explain that signed contracts are legally binding, regardless of family relationships. The line went quiet, except for Jeremy's labored breathing and what sounded like Lori's voice in the background, sharp and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. This isn't over, Dad. You'll regret this decision. We'll find ways to fight back that you won't see coming. Jeremy, I'm documenting every threat you make. My attorney is very interested in your responses to legal demands. The line went dead. I set the phone down gently and immediately picked it up again, dialing Samuel's home number. Willard, how did it go? Exactly as you predicted. Complete denial, followed by threats when he realized I was serious. He claims the contract is worthless paper and says he'll fight us in court. Perfect. Denial of a valid contract in the face of clear evidence. That's going to cost him additional attorney fees when we win. Did you document the conversation? Every word, including his admission that Lore's assault was barely a slap, and his threats about finding ways to fight back. Samuel's chuckle was warm and professional. Willard, your son just handed us additional evidence for our case. The demand letter goes out first thing tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I reviewed my notes from the call, writing down Jeremy's exact words while they were fresh in memory. His panic had been obvious beneath the bluster, and his threats only strengthened our legal position. The contract lay before me, no longer just paper and ink, but a sword of justice sharp and ready for battle. Jeremy had called my bluff, and now he was about to learn it wasn't a bluff at all. Thursday evening's quiet was shattered by my phone's aggressive ringing. I glanced at the caller ID, Jeremy, and checked my watch. 8:30 p.m., right on schedule. Samuel's certified demand letter had been delivered that morning. Dad, what is this legal summon? Did you actually sue your own son? Jeremy's voice cracked with panic, the cocky dismissal from Monday completely gone. In the background, I could hear Lori's voice shrill and hostile. Jeremy, you received Samuel's demand letter. You have 10 days to respond with full payment. Full payment, Dad? Or am I supposed to get $300,000? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jeremy had blown through $700,000 in house sale proceeds and couldn't scrape together half that amount. His financial desperation was now crystal clear. That's not my concern. You signed a contract, Jeremy. Honor your obligations. Family should stick together. How can you do this to your own blood? I'd been expecting this. The emotional manipulation, the guilt about family loyalty. But something had changed in me since Saturday morning's assault. The man who would have wavered at those words was gone. You chose this path when you decided to steal from me and let your wife strike me. Actions have consequences. Mom would never approve of this. She'd want the family to stay together. Jeremy's invocation of Mary's memory hit like a physical blow, but not in the way he intended. Instead of guilt, I felt a surge of protective anger. Your mother would be appalled by your behavior. She believed in integrity, Jeremy, in keeping promises and treating people with respect. It was just a slap, nothing serious. You're making it sound like attempted murder. There it was. Jeremy's admission recorded and documented that the assault had occurred. Samuel would be very interested in this particular confession. Tell me, Jeremy, would you allow someone to slap your mother and call it nothing serious? Silence, then the sound of heated whispering. Laurie's voice became clearer, more aggressive. Give me that phone, I heard her demand, then shouting toward the receiver. You selfish old man. You're destroying this family over money. Mrs. Brooks, I said formally, your voice is being recorded. Continue making threats if you'd like them documented for court proceedings. The phone was apparently jerked away from Laurie. Jeremy's voice returning, but shakier now.
Dad, please.
We can work this out. Family to family. No lawyers, no courts, just us talking like reasonable people. We had that conversation Monday. You called the contract worthless paper and threatened to fight me in court. Now you're getting exactly what you asked for. You'll regret this. We'll find ways to stop you. Ways you won't see coming. Jeremy, I'm documenting every threat you make. Each hostile word becomes additional evidence in our civil case. Civil case? Assault and battery. Intentional infliction of emotional distress and now intimidation of a witness. Your wife struck me in front of multiple neighbors, and you're threatening retaliation for pursuing legal remedies. The breathing on the other end became rapid, panicked. Jeremy was finally understanding the full scope of his legal exposure. Dad, we don't have that kind of money. Even if we wanted to pay, which we don't, we can't. Then you'll need to figure out how to liquidate assets, Jeremy. Sell Laurie's Mercedes, her jewelry, whatever you bought with my money. Or the court will do it for you. This is blackmail. This is contract enforcement. There's a significant legal difference. More background shouting from Laurie. Then Jeremy's voice strained and desperate. Fine. If you want to tear this family apart, you've succeeded. When this is over, you'll never see us again. I'm looking forward to that outcome. The line went dead. I immediately dialed Samuel's number, my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Willard, I take it Jeremy received our letter. Complete panic followed by manipulation attempts followed by threats. He admitted the assault occurred, said they don't have the money, and threatened retaliation for pursuing legal action. Outstanding. Panic means he consulted a lawyer who explained his actual legal position. The threats give us additional civil causes of action. How do you feel? I looked at my neat handwriting documenting Jeremy's panic and desperation, then at Mary's photograph smiling encouragingly from the desk. Samuel, I feel like a man who's finally stopped being pushed around. Good, because tomorrow we file everything in court. Jeremy's about to learn that some mistakes can't be undone with charm and manipulation. After hanging up, I sat in my study reviewing the evening's notes. Jeremy's transformation from arrogance to panic had been swift and complete. The reality of legal consequences was finally penetrating his entitled worldview. Justice, I reflected, was a patient teacher, but its lessons, once delivered, were never forgotten. Friday morning brought unseasonable warmth, and Harold Jenkins to my front door, coffee mug in hand and concern etched across his weathered face. Willard, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I've been thinking about what happened last weekend. I invited him in, grateful for the company. The house had felt different since I'd started the legal proceedings. Not lonely but expectant, like a theater before the curtain rises. Harold, I appreciate you checking on me. Actually, I wanted you to know something. The whole neighborhood's talking about what your son and his wife did, and not in a good way for them. We settled in my kitchen, the same spot where Jeremy had once sat begging for money with promises he never intended to keep. What kind of talk? Harold sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Well, Mrs. Chen saw the moving truck Saturday morning. She was getting her newspaper when she heard the shouting. By the time that woman slapped you, half the street was watching. I'd known there were witnesses, but I hadn't realized how public the spectacle had become. Tom Patterson's been telling everyone about it, says he's never seen anything like it. A grown woman striking an elderly man in his own front yard. People are upset, Willard, really upset. The validation was unexpected and deeply satisfying. I'd spent decades being the quiet neighbor, the man who kept to himself and caused no trouble. Now, when I needed community support, it was there. Harold, I need to tell you something. I filed a lawsuit against Jeremy. Contract violation and civil damages for the assault. Harold's eyebrows rose, but his expression remained supportive. Good for you. About time someone held that boy accountable. I might need witnesses, people who saw what happened Saturday morning. You'll have them. Mrs. Chen's already said she'd testify if needed, so have the Johnsons, and Tom Patterson's practically volunteering himself. None of us liked seeing you treated that way. A knock at the door interrupted us. Through the window I could see Mrs. Chen holding a covered dish. "Willard, dear, I brought you some soup," she said when I opened the door. Her usual gentle demeanor was replaced by something fiercer. "I heard about the legal troubles with your son. News travels fast in this neighborhood. It should. What that woman did to you was shameful. Harold told me you might need witnesses for court." Mrs. Chen's offer came without hesitation, her moral clarity refreshing after weeks of Jeremy's manipulation and lies. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Chen, more than you know. That boy of yours needs to learn some respect, and his wife needs to learn you don't strike your elders, especially not in public like that." After she left, Harold and I sat in comfortable silence, processing the unexpected community solidarity. "Willard, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. How do you feel about all this suing your own son? I mean, that can't be easy." I considered the question carefully. A week ago it would have torn me apart. Now it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Harold, I feel relieved. For the first time in years, I'm not being taken advantage of. I'm not being treated like a fool or a resource to be exploited. I'm finally fighting back. Mary would be proud." The simple statement hit me harder than any of Jeremy's threats or manipulations. Mary would be proud. She had always believed in standing up to bullies, in fighting for what was right regardless of family relationships. She always said I was too trusting when it came to Jeremy, that I made excuses for behavior I wouldn't tolerate from anyone else. Well, you're not making excuses anymore. Harold was right. The man who had quietly absorbed Jeremy's demands and manipulations was gone, replaced by someone who understood that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was enabling. That afternoon I received a call from Samuel. "Willard, Jeremy's attorney, contacted my office today. They want to negotiate already. Panic makes people move quickly. His lawyer understands the strength of our case. Signed contracts are hard to argue with, and the assault charge with multiple witnesses makes this a nightmare for them. What kind of negotiation? Payment plan? Probably, maybe partial settlement. The important thing is they're acknowledging the debt exists. That's a major victory right there." After hanging up, I walked to my study window and looked out at the quiet street. Mrs. Chen was watering her flowers. Harold was checking his mailbox. And life continued its normal rhythm. But something fundamental had changed. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the one with the power. Samuel's office felt different this time. Not like a place I was seeking help, but like the headquarters of a successful campaign. The mahogany conference table held neat stacks of documents, and Jeremy's attorney sat across from us, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Brooks, Jeremy's lawyer, began. My client is prepared to offer a settlement that we believe is fair to all parties." David Morrison was younger than Samuel, with the nervous energy of someone who'd taken a bad case and was trying to minimize the damage. I'd researched him after Samuel mentioned his name, recent law school graduate, mostly traffic violations in small claims court. "Let's hear it," Samuel said, his tone professional but skeptical. "Mr. Jeremy Brooks is prepared to acknowledge the loan and agree to a payment plan. $50,000 immediately, then monthly payments of $2,000 until the debt is satisfied." I did quick mental math. At that rate, it would take 12 years to pay off the principal, not counting interest. I was 68 years old. "Absolutely not," I said before Samuel could respond. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Brooks, my client has limited resources. The house sale proceeds have been allocated to their expenses." "Allocated to a Mercedes and designer furniture," Samuel interjected. "We've done our research, Mr. Morrison. Your client spent $300,000 in 6 weeks on luxury items while planning to move into my client's home without permission. Those purchases were made in good faith." "Good faith?" I leaned forward, feeling the controlled anger I'd learned to harness over the past 2 weeks. "Your client struck me in my own front yard. Where's the good faith in that?" Morrison glanced at his notes nervously. "My client is prepared to have Mrs. Brooks issue a written apology for that incident." Samuel's laugh was cold and professional. "Your client committed assault and battery in front of multiple witnesses. A written apology doesn't address civil damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress." "What are you looking for?" Morrison asked, defeat creeping into his voice. Samuel slid a document across the table. Full payment of principal and accrued interest, $372,000 within 90 days. If payment isn't made, we'll proceed with asset seizure and wage garnishment. That's impossible. They don't have that kind of money. Then they need to liquidate their luxury purchases, I said calmly. Sell the Mercedes, return the designer furniture, liquidate whatever assets they bought with my money. Morrison read Samuel's document, his face growing paler with each paragraph. This also includes civil damages for the assault. $50,000 for assault, emotional distress and public humiliation. Very reasonable considering the circumstances. So you're demanding $422,000 total. We're demanding justice, I said. Your client stole from me, attempted to move into my home without permission and physically assaulted me when I refused. These are the consequences of their choices. Morrison excused himself to make a phone call, presumably to Jeremy. Through the conference room's glass wall, I could see him pacing and gesturing frantically. How do you think Jeremy's taking this? I asked Samuel. About as well as you'd expect. His chief lawyer probably told him he could negotiate this down to a manageable payment plan. Now he's learning that stealing from your father has real consequences. Morrison returned looking defeated. My client needs time to consider your terms. He has 48 hours, Samuel said. After that, we proceed with full legal action, including asset seizure and wage garnishment. The Illinois court system is very efficient when it comes to contract enforcement. After Morrison left, Samuel and I remained in the conference room reviewing the case files. Willard, I think they'll settle. Jeremy's probably calling every bank in Chicago trying to get a loan, but his debt-to-income ratio makes him a terrible risk. His only option is liquidating those luxury purchases. And if he doesn't, then we take everything. House, car, furniture, wages. The beauty of contract law is its clarity. He owes the money. Period. The court will help us collect it. That evening, I sat in my study with a glass of Mary's favorite wine, looking at the framed photograph of us at our last anniversary dinner. She was laughing at something I'd said, her eyes bright with love and mischief. You'd enjoy this, I told her picture. Our son finally learning that actions have consequences. The phone sat silent on my desk. 46 hours remaining for Jeremy to decide between voluntary payment and legal asset seizure. For the first time in 2 weeks, I was genuinely curious to see what choice he'd make. The call came at exactly 5:47 p.m. on the second day. It was reading in my study when the phone rang, Jeremy's name appearing on the caller ID. Dad, we accept your terms? His voice was hollow, defeated, stripped of the arrogance that had characterized our previous conversations. No threats, no manipulation, no appeals to family loyalty. All of them. All of them. We'll have the money within 30 days. I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. After 35 years of giving in to his demands, I'd learned the power of letting Jeremy fill the quiet space with his own discomfort. We had to sell everything, Dad, the Mercedes, all of Laura's furniture, her jewelry. We took out loans against my salary. We're basically starting over. Good, I said simply. Good, that's all you have to say. The old Jeremy was trying to surface. The one who expected sympathy even when facing consequences for his own actions. But I was no longer the man who provided it. Jeremy, you stole from, demanded to live in my house and allowed your wife to assault me. Starting over seems like appropriate justice. She wants to apologize for hitting you. I'll accept her written apology as specified in the settlement agreement. Dad, after this is over, after we pay you back, can we try to build our relationship? The question caught me off guard. For a moment I heard echoes of the little boy who used to help me fix things in the garage, who brought me drawings from school, who called me the best dad in the world. But that boy had grown into a man who viewed kindness as weakness and generosity as foolishness. Jeremy, you can rebuild your relationship with me the same way you'll rebuild your financial life. One trustworthy action at a time over many years with no guarantee of success. That's harsh. That's reality. Trust once broken isn't easily repaired. After hanging up, I called Samuel to report Jeremy's acceptance of our terms. Congratulations, Willard. You've just taught a very expensive lesson about the importance of honoring contracts and treating people with respect. Samuel, I can thank you enough for everything you've done. Thank me after the money's in your account, but yes, this has been one of the more satisfying cases of my career. It's not often I get to see justice served so clearly. 2 weeks later, the electronic transfer appeared in my bank account. $422,000 representing not just repayment with interest and damages, but validation that some fights are worth having. I printed the bank statement and filed it next to the original loan contract, creating a complete record of Jeremy's expensive education and personal responsibility. That evening, Harold stopped by with a bottle of wine. "I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that your son paid up." "He did. Good for you, Willard. You showed real courage standing up to family like that." We sat on my front porch watching the sunset paint the quiet street in golden light. The same street where Lori had struck me 3 weeks earlier, where neighbors had witnessed my humiliation and rallied to support me. "Harold, can I ask you something, of course? Do you think I was too hard on them?" Harold considered this carefully, the way he'd probably weighed difficult questions during his teaching career. "Willard, kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's enabling. Your son needed to learn that his actions have consequences. Better he learn it from you than from the world, which would have been much less forgiving." Later that night, I sat in my study with Mary's photograph, feeling something I hadn't experienced since her death. Complete peace. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet. My sanctuary, earned and defended, filled with the satisfaction of a man who had finally learned to fight for what mattered. Jeremy would recover from this financial setback, probably become more responsible for it. Lori would learn that charm and manipulation have limits. And I had learned that even patient men can find their strength when pushed too far. The phone would ring again someday. Maybe Jeremy would call to report progress in his life. Maybe to ask for advice instead of money. Maybe Harold would call with neighborhood news or Samuel with updates from other cases. But tonight the silence was perfect. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. At 68 years old, I had finally learned that some battles are worth fighting, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, is always worth pursuing. The contract was paid, the lesson was learned, and I was free. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.